You want to find your tribe of raving fans. I'm going to help you do it. This is the Digging Deep podcast with 360 Media, where we help you do better business. Hey everybody, this is Justin Lamb, and you're watching episode, what are we at today? I think we're at 12. Yeah, episode 12 of Digging Deep, where we help business owners do better business by exploring topics that relate to everything business. Today I have a wonderful lady with me. She is been an entrepreneur, just celebrating 26 years in business now. She's had 4 businesses and sold her second business for a nice sum of chunk of change is what I would imagine, as she's built that up to a 25-person company. She currently is focused on helping companies, find the right people and propel their organization forward from an HR perspective. Uh, Please welcome, Angela Height from Chrysalis People Solutions, is it? And the Dream Team. Dot Solutions. So welcome, Angela. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thanks, Justin. I'm looking forward to being here. I am here.
Amazing. And so one of the big things that's happened over this last little while, and your podcast is going to come out a little bit later as we have things in the queue. But one of the things that's really locked down and shaken a lot of companies is COVID-19, and we're still quite in the thick of it, at least in BC here, where we've been almost like the city's almost shut down. I mean, without a formal lockdown. I mean, we've been locked. In our houses and getting cabin fever for the last little while. How's that been for you?
Interesting time. So what happened with my clients is that I had 2 large clients that were coaching projects that were about to start. One was a 5-restaurant company. They went underground. And then the other one was a hospitality event kind of company. They had to let their entire team go. So it was like new projects just disappeared. And then my bread and butter, which has been recruitment for a long period of time, just went again. Everybody dropped off, uncertain times, not going to hire at this point in time, right? So they all stopped. So that was kind of scary at first. And then, but one of my clients stuck around. So that was my IT client, which actually has 3 hires in it. So that was great. I went, okay, and then recently I just got another new client that just started with me today. So, work is still happening, but those first couple of weeks that everybody just kind of went, and that was exactly it. That's the thing that I found with all of the people on my, all of my clients and all of my client contacts and all the people that I've been working with for the last few years, all just kind of went shaky and kind of went, what's going on? What do we do? How do we handle this? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and that sort of uncertainty is kind of an interesting play. We think of it as this is a pandemic and this happens, but the reality is stuff happens all the time in our business or in industry and marketplace. This just happens to be one that affected everybody all at once instead of in different parts of their business cycle. So in your opinion, as a person who deals with HR issues and the recruitment process, how does being able to pivot and be able to be the employer, what is the role that they play in terms of trying to keep their team together and on track, and not letting the panic from the heavens kind of shake the earth below them?
Yeah, that's interesting because that's exactly what I'm writing right now. So I'm writing 3 blogs right now, which are all about this particular thing. At the end of February, Time Magazine actually called the coronavirus the world's largest work from home experiment. Think about that for a second, because it was like en masse. All of these companies went from everybody going into the office. Some of them were prepared. Others were told the next day, you're going in, you're working from home tomorrow, starting tomorrow, or starting on Monday. So all of a sudden, everybody got shipped over. And at the same time, we've got all this fear going on, like, in terms of being infected, not having enough stuff, not having enough money, not knowing where things are going. So we're all in fear already. So here we've got a huge change that happened en masse in a really heightened fear section. And all the studies show that everything on change management shows you that change, if you want it to fail, have it happen abruptly and don't give a lot of people notice, and then make them do it. So those are the things that actually mean that change actually fails, and we're right in that particular place. So what we as leaders need to do is we need to actually address the fear as being the very first step in anything in terms of moving our businesses forward in any productivity that happens. And that's probably one of the hardest things for managers in general to do, because I mean, business in general have stayed away from emotional discussions, right? We try and keep that separate. We go, oh, this is business, that's personal kind of thing. And yet there's no way to actually keep that separate right at this particular point in time. Because as human beings, we react to fear in one of three ways. We either run away, we fight, or we freeze. And when there's prolonged fear, what happens is we actually go through the cycles and go through all three of them over and over and over again. And because our brains are actually designed with fear in terms of having those responses, all of the blood kind of rushes to our muscles and everything, and our adrenaline, everything like that, and takes it away from rational thinking. So our entire brains are actually working on trying to figure out what information do we need, hypervigilance, obsession, assessing, because you're constantly looking for, do I need to run away or do I need to fight at this point in time? So there's no space, as I said. So unless a team leader or a manager actually addresses that fear, you can't really get a lot out of people, because they might be there physically even, but their brains are actually still working on that kind of stuff, right? So the first step is actually acknowledging that there is fear there and giving people the airtime to actually say what it is, so that you can work together to actually deal with that. Because if you're working from home right now, or your company continues to work right now, you've got, there's support in the sense that you've got a team of people that are there and you can all support each other. And we're starting to notice that, with more and more social distancing and being apart from everybody else, it's very important for us to stay connected, right? And this allows us to actually do that in a work setting where you're all working towards a particular goal. So the three things that that a manager actually has to do in order to move them to there is they need to acknowledge the team and allow them to voice their fears. So that's the first step. The second one is to provide them with a reassurance and a path forward. So they're kind of thinking about it and going, okay, here's what we're doing, what we're moving forward, so that they have some sort of a vision of a much more controlled future. Because if you're in business right now and you have the opportunity to take your stuff online, because you either offer your service or product either over the phone or online, then it's easy for you to do, but you're still in a particular team. But you do need to kind of step. Okay, I lost my train of thought there. I'm gonna edit that out.
No, we don't edit. It's a live show, honey. So let's go back to that then.
Yeah.
If leadership one has to provide a open forum for people to air and to feel confidence, would that then lead to transparency and then taking charge and taking leadership and giving the individuals or the teams in question the carrot to move towards? Would that be a correct assumption?
Yeah. I mean, first off, you got to give them the opportunity just to air it, to say, hey, this is what I'm afraid of.
Yeah,
And
and
this is
so
why.
we've established that part, and that
Yeah.
would be the transparency and open forum.
Yeah.
So where we're at now is, providing, true leadership, and that's, being able to provide them direction in times of turmoil, so that they know, where they're heading, so that they're not rowing left, right, center,
Yeah,
and backwards, but they're rowing towards a particular piece.
exactly. And so that's where the point where you got to provide the vision, right? In terms of where you're going and why you're going there. So, I mean, if you've got a company that allows you to work offline right now, then, or sorry, online, then basically what you're doing is you're offering them a way of saying, okay, this is how we're actually servicing our customers right now. We're offering them something that they need under these particular circumstances. And in order to get that done, we need to do these 5 things. So giving them a roadmap to say what the future looks like in uncertain times really brings down the anxiety that's there.
Okay, so then what's the final piece of that equation?
Um, Giving the team opportunities to support each other. So, some of the things that we typically do in teams in the workplace is we have, weekly meetings, we have daily meetings, that kind of thing. We need to get those online, and we need to set up the weekly meetings so that you offer everybody the opportunity to say, okay, this is where I am with regards to my steps that I need to do. This is where I'm running into challenges. And the challenges are not necessarily just work challenges right now. Because think about the whole idea of working from home in a social isolating situation where you've got your entire family members at home as well. And if your home space isn't actually set up for working from home, meaning you don't have private space, you don't have space from your kids, you don't have space from your spouse and extended family, and they're all interrupting you, these are all things that you need to kind of address in those actually weekly meetings to say, what are the actual challenges? Are they work challenges? Are they work environment challenges, so that you can actually deal with both of them in those meetings, and then give other people in the group the opportunity to provide suggestions and ways of actually supporting each other. So the more you do that, the more you've got a cohesive team that's moving in one direction, and you feel that support that everybody has.
Okay, so here's an interesting thought to that. So, what you've described in my world, as I explain that to people in the marketing sector, that relates to corporate culture. And would you stand to agree that, what you've explained here actually should be something that's implemented straight across the board, whether it was online and offline, but now people in corporations, big and small, are challenged with actually having to face, you know, this this beast of corporate culture, and how to really provide leadership at this time. But this is something that's been missing in many enterprises, for great number of years.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, and when you think about company culture, I mean, you're also thinking of like it's the workspace, it's the environment, it's do you have a foosball table in the game room? Do you have group space? Do you have whatever? So a lot of it's quite physical. When we now have a challenge of taking culture and giving it to individuals to carry within because they're not in a workspace together anymore. So you got to give them more and more opportunity to collaborate and to deal with each other. So culture becomes more a question of how you interact. So the behavior between the people that are on the team and how they actually interact with their customers. So it's the behavior piece which is becoming much more important. It's always been important, but it's become even more important now as everybody's individually in their spaces.
Okay, and so do you feel like, there are companies who work virtually, who have strong corporate cultures prior to, the pandemic occurring,
Yeah.
and you were mentioning foosball tables and lunchrooms and things like that, where people can gather and congregate. However, I don't personally believe that corporate culture is developed in that particular sense. I think a lot of it comes from the actions and the um, the way management, or ownership, conducts themselves, and it's an extension of that. So I mean, if you have a board, it's a collective of that board and or the leader of that board, and if it's individual teams or a sole proprietor, they're the ones who implement the culture, and that's a byproduct of actions, but not necessarily interaction on a physical level.
Yeah, totally. Now think about that. If you're, I mean, you're talking about role models in terms of the leaders being role models. Think about that for a section. How for like in terms of the remote world, how are you now going to model that behavior? Because some of the modeling of behavior is when you observe somebody, right, in terms of what they're actually doing. Then there's the words that they're saying, and then there's the written information and stuff that's out there, right? I mean, right now you're actually being reduced by one because you don't have that visual interaction anymore, right? So you can't see what they're actually doing. So you can't emulate what they're actually doing. So now it becomes even more important in terms of how you interact when you do interact together, and also more important in terms of what information you're providing people, um, written, visual, everything, right? Video, the whole shebang, like really tapping into that internal marketing almost.
And so that leads me to the next question would be then, for those businesses that are completely shut down, so primarily in the hospitality, restaurant businesses where many restaurants are shut down and or decimated to to bare minimums. What can those owners or managers of the business do in a time where now they're you know all locked up at home, and how can they prepare their people to come back to that workforce once this all lifts, and still come back stronger and not feel like that they're behind the eight ball all over again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a few things. It really comes down to the actual business and what they did for their people when they let them go. So did they take care of them? I mean, I was talking to one business owner recently, and they basically paid off all of the any credit card debt that an employee had to make things a little bit easier for them to deal with this particular space and time. If your company has done things like that to take care of your people or paid them as long as possible, or set them up with the resources in order for them to get money during this particular point in time that the government is offering, et cetera, that helps a great deal in terms of reducing the anxiety that those people are doing. The other thing then is communication, right? Because if you let people go, and you're dealing with your own stuff that you're dealing with, and you're not continually communicating with those people, if you had a fantastic team before, the team starts to drift apart, right? Because there's no opportunity for people to, again, get involved with each other. So having communication regularly and doing some type of activities, even as a group, to continue to stay connected during that time. And, you can do simple things like, play some games and that kind of thing online, like using Zoom or that thing. So it's team building activities. Or just giving people an opportunity to share and see where they're at and what they need and how they can support each other again. Just those types of conversations would really make a big impact. And then when it comes closer to the point where you think things are actually going to shift and change and you're going to need them back, communicating in terms of how you're actually going to do that. So, if you're going to do it gradually, if you're going to do it all at once, if you think it's actually coming up and it's going to happen in, a week, 2 weeks, whatever kind of thing, in terms of lifting those types of barriers that we currently have to going back to work. So letting them know what that plan looks like and what that means for them, so that they can mentally prepare for the fact that they're actually going to be coming back and look forward to it, because you're giving them an opportunity as well to then look at, okay, one of the things I'm actually finding quite interesting about this particular point in time is that it's making people go inside and really rethink in terms of how they're actually offering their business to the world. So what that means is that, some people who are not in the fear part of it are actually really considering how are they actually going to offer what they do. Is it changed what their offering is? Are they moving more into closer to their passions or anything like that, right? So there's a whole new reinvention of what business is going to be about. You need to, if you have a great team and you want your team to come along, you're going to have to bring them into the thinking of that. so that they can also think about how they want to contribute to that particular vision. So it offers you as a company leader to get that input and to hit the ground running immediately upon things shifting then.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think um, very rarely, I mean, business owners say it all the time. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. I don't have time. Well, now they have a lot of time on their hands. And as such, when they have that time, they're able to now really like critically think about their business and not just sitting there putting out fires all day long. They're able to take a look at the big fire, go, well, it's on fire, but how can you pivot and how can you, mitigate this in the future? And that starts that thinking process. It tells you how vulnerable your business is in an environment like that. And I think the long game of that is businesses will come out stronger um, at the very end of it all. In the short term, you're going to see a lot of people fall by the waysides, and as mean as it sounds, the reset actually will shake off a lot of people who are wantrepreneurs. So people who did it because the economy was good and it was a good time to do it. And just like every dog has its day, every cycle has their legacy. Uh, that entrepreneurship is being tested. That the drive, the mental fortitude that goes along with it, and the real leaders of that space will show up at the end of it all. So I think the industry as a whole gets stronger um, with a lot less diluting of businesses and services that were just for fun because the economy was good and it was good to turn an extra buck.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. And then I always, I mean, what I'm inspired by is that if you do have those stronger businesses, they've actually dealt with some of these emotional issues that are involved in life, right? I mean, it's in business and it's in life, and we've tried to separate it in the past, and now we're bringing them back together. So you've got much more opportunity to have real connections at work and really working together on that full-on basis, like you're a full human being there, not just contributing a portion of your mind. It's all of you, right? So that to me is kind of exciting because you've got a whole different way of actually approaching how people get stuff done.
I think it'll humanize business again, whereas I think it started to become very transactional and almost like an expectation that I provide you this and you give me money, and I don't necessarily have to you know work on all the other bits and pieces that make your business really human and really relatable. And I think in marketing that's been a big buzzword over this last little while. It's authenticity and being genuine, and I think that gets tested really heavily under fire when it's a pandemic and everybody has to then employ or deploy, sorry, uh, that that empathy and that compassion, all while still being able to build and weather the business and be leaders for their teams. Like it's a really big test of character. So I think that's really important.
Totally. And what it also does is that obviously, like when you're in that and you're experiencing it and you're doing it, you're going to find all of your points of weakness, right? And if you're willing to actually look at those points of weakness and start to look at different ways of doing things to address them, again, we've got an opportunity to kind of reset at a much higher level as
Mm.
leaders, as business owners, in general.
Yeah, 100% agree. So one of the things I like to ask our guests is, what is a resource, something that has really made an impact on you, your business, or in your world? Doesn't have to be related to your business. But what type of resource would you share with a person who might be listening to this that could really turn the tide or make a pivot point for them?
Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, for me, what I've been dealing with the fear. So how I've been dealing with the fear has been I've turned to yoga, meditation, and then reading. So the big piece for me is that I've been working with this group that's doing meditations, and we get a meditation every single week. And remembering to actually rise above the fear. So go from a place of the fear place, where everything's kind of swirling around, getting into a calm place and going into our higher possibility or higher self, whatever way you want to look at that piece of it, but going up there and staying there, because in that place you actually get the ideas and you get the inspiration and you get everything that you need in order to move forward. And the other thing that it does is the more time you spend in that place, it also calms down your fears around how things are going to look in the future, like the economic side of things, so that you can kind of relax and go, okay, things are moving forward. We just need to actually just ride out this particular wave that we're on right now. So those are two things. The other thing is I've been reading. So one book I'm reading right now, it's called The Surrender Experiment. Um, Michael Sager is the author, and very interesting guy. Huge, owned like a multi million dollar company at one point. Down in the U.S. is a yogi master, done meditation, that kind of stuff, and he basically goes through his story. And his story is really about surrendering to life circumstances, because what he discovered over a lifetime of doing that is that life always has a bigger opportunity for you than your limited mind will allow for. So if you actually surrender to it, even though you might be in fear that it's going to cause X, Y, and Z, what it does is it actually opens you up to something so much bigger than what you ever thought was possible for yourself. And I love that, because it gives you a lot of hope in terms of saying, okay, let's see if we surrender to this particular experience that we're in right now. We'll ride it out, we'll get through, and we will be a lot stronger at the other end.
Hmm, that's fair. So thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. I really appreciate it. For those people who would like to learn more about what you're able to offer, and a little bit more about the services, where are they going to find you online?
They're going to find me at Dream Team, all one word, dot solutions.
Dreamteam.solutions. Perfect. And are you on any social platforms that they can link up with you at all?
Also on LinkedIn and on Facebook.
Perfectly. Perfect. Thank you, Angela, so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with me and explore this.
Thanks.